Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paula McCain, and I'm a recovery business advisor for North Central Texas Small Business Development Center. I apologize. I usually have the day's holiday. I don't have it today. I'll do 2 of them tomorrow, so join us tomorrow. The SBDC is a leading provider of assistance for small businesses. We are grant funded, and because of that, we are able to provide our services at no cost. Today's presentation is entitled Coopetition, and it's being presented by Mark Wilson. And we're going to have a little bit of housekeeping here. Put all your questions and comments in the chat room. We welcome your participation. It's more fun that way. So let me present Mark Wilson. And Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Be glad to. Good afternoon, everyone. You're hearing me from the small, tiny state of Virginia. That's where I live now. But let me tell you up front, I'm a Texan, born in Dallas, Texas. So you can trust me because I'm a Texan. But moved here, and my dad was with DuPont, and he got moved upstairs to the main office in Wilmington, Delaware. So I grew up in the home state of Joe Biden. But anyways, I've done a lot of work in Texas since, and love my Lone Star state, and hope to be back again because I have grown weary of webinars and Zoom meetings and Facebook Live and all the things we've been using to keep a personal touch going in what has become a digital world very quickly. The pandemic hastened many things, and one is it brought the digital world just screaming into mom and pop stores throughout the country, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. By way of introduction, I was for 4 decades a retail, restaurant, and hospitality, I guess, executive. I mean, I ran companies, I've started companies, I've closed companies, I've raised money, I've lost money, but always kept close to the independently owned stores and restaurants throughout the country. And 11 years ago, I decided to, actually my last gig in retail was in Dallas. I had a store on Knox Street called Current Energy, and then my partner was H. Ross Perot Jr. And we were an energy company, so we brokered energy since energy is deregulated in the state of Texas. But we also had a store, and the idea was to grow the stores across the country, and that's what they had me for, because that's what I've done for my career. But in the store, you could buy and have installed anything that you could put on your home or your business to reduce your consumption of gas, water, or electricity. So we sold tankless water heaters and high SEER air conditioners and heated toilet seats and just everything energy oriented. And you could also switch your energy provider at the store as well. Well, this was roughly 2008, and we had a recession in 2009. I don't know if you all remember it or not, but and I understand that Texas probably fell a little behind the recession because of all the oil money you all have kept you from going down the tubes into this huge recession that hit the rest of the country. Anyway, that was 2008, 2009. Well, we decided not to grow the retail side of the company because brokering electricity was so much more profitable. So they didn't need me to run one store because I've run up to as many as 550 at one time. So I moved home and started working part-time as a contract employee for the Virginia SBDC, and began helping them counsel and get into the weeds and get into the details with their retail, restaurant, and hospitality clients. Well, that was 11 years ago. And I speak at all the national shows for the SBDC. There's about 1,200 offices throughout the country. And I've taken my program, STAMP, Small Town and Merchant Program, now to 32 states. And Texas has been one of my favorites. I've done a lot of work over the last 10 years or so in Texas. So been all over, north, central, southern, and east. Haven't done a lot of work in west. But that's a long story to tell you that I've been counseling and interviewing and working with over thousands of small businesses and have come up with a syllabus and an agenda of several seminars and webinars. And what we're going to talk about today is Coopetition. And merged with that is another webinar that I do called Eventacular, Team Eventacular. And team stands for towns, events, and merchants. Team. Eventacular talks about the events that small towns and individual merchants have throughout the year. Because what we've come to know at least I've come to know over the past decade, that small towns and small businesses tend to be event driven. So I wrote this webinar, believe it or not, 5 or 6 years ago, when the commemoration of the 150th or the sesquicentennial of the end of the Civil War. And in the state of Virginia, the Civil War was very, very active, and almost every town in the state ended up having a battle or some involvement. Well, anyway, the state was celebrating the end of the war, the 150th anniversary of the end of the war, and every town in Virginia had an event, and it became very apparent that towns needed some help with their events, and particularly with this. I found that there was a disconnect between the local merchants and sometimes the planners and developers of the town events. And to the point of where some of the merchants wouldn't even open the day of the event because they would say, well, it's not my customer. This event just brings people to eat and drink, and they're not going to spend any money in my store, and they'll mess it up, and they'll want to use my bathroom, and I won't do any additional business. And I thought to myself, it's baloney. I bring you 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 new people or existing people to your town, and you're telling me you want to close because they're not your customer? I couldn't believe it. So listen, I can bring customers to your town, but I can't sell to them. You have to do that. And shame on you if you don't think you can take new customers from out of town and sell them your product. We need to talk about it if you can't do that. And you know as well as I do that the COVID pandemic has caused more people to get on the internet. And as a result, there are thousands of people that have found your store in Denton or in Colleyville or in Carrollville, Carrollton, it doesn't matter, North Central Texas. They found you on the internet and may have never been to visit your store. And you have to be ready for that. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into the slides. We're going to start with the concept of coopetition. What is coopetition anyway? Well, in the spirit of coopetition, I'll just read you what I feel and what I wrote as we try to explain the collapse of some of our small businesses from this horrid Are you guys seeing my title slide or the slide that says "Come in, we're awesome"?
Not yet. Hit
Okay.
the share button at the
Yeah,
bottom.
yeah, that's the issue. It's on my one screen and not on the other. So here we go. How's this feel to you?
There we go.
Okay, great. So I love this sign, by the way. This was in the window of a store I visited recently, and it said, "Come in, we're awesome." And I just thought it was a great message, a positive message to people that are shopping in bricks and mortar stores now, and certainly will in the future as we wind this pandemic down and we put this virus asunder. But anyways, as we try to explain the collapse of some of our small businesses from this horrid pandemic, we try to also point out the valiant efforts of those that have seized the catastrophe as an opportunity to change their businesses for the better and carry on. Over half the businesses that I've spoken to in the last several weeks, more importantly, the last several months, are ahead of last year. I'd tell you over half the businesses that I've met with are ahead of last year's. And what's that mean? That means they've pivoted their business during the pandemic and found a way to do as much business as they were doing before the pandemic and even more than some because of the effectiveness of their pivot. And pivot doesn't mean just changing the way you do in your current business. It means looking for new business that has revenue streams that are brand new to your business. So some businesses are selling product channels that they never sold before. And that could be a result of vacancies or voids that were created by businesses that simply didn't make it through the pandemic. So there are towns throughout the country, I'm sure there's towns throughout Texas, that have had businesses close because of what most of the analysts have said, a drop off of over 50% of walk-in traffic to bricks and mortar stores during the pandemic. So a 50% decrease in walk-in traffic was enough to put some businesses out of business. And I think most of you probably know Warren Buffett, and he's famous. He's one of our billionaires, and he's famous for his quotes. And one of his quotes about the pandemic is this: "Now we're going to see who's been swimming naked." And you know what he meant by that? He meant they were already in trouble pre-pandemic. They were hanging on by their fingernails, and the downturn in walk-in traffic was enough to put them below their, and here's a number I want every business to know, below their cash flow break even. Do you all know what a cash flow break even is? It's the number you have to do every month to pay your bills. And the pandemic was enough to take some businesses below that threshold, and they started losing money. So they had no choice but rather than throw good money after bad, they decided to close. Why do I tell you that? Because it's an opportunity for every other business in town that's still open. Because the stores that closed had categories that sold very well and categories that were very popular. Well, that means the town needs someone else selling them. So the wise retailers, the wise independently owned stores, talked to the owners of those stores, found out what categories they had that were uber popular and sold very well. And they went and picked up those product lines and began selling them as part of their pivot, new revenue streams they didn't have before. So remember, revenue streams and pivoting go hand in hand. So you have businesses now selling products they've never sold before based on how they decided to make sure they were relevant to their loyal customers during the pandemic. Because the consumer has changed. The consumer has changed due to the pandemic. Everybody has changed because of the pandemic. So you might say, well, what's that have to do with coopetition? Well, here's the deal. Coopetition is a word actually I thought I had come up with on my own. But after some research, it turns out the technology sector has been using the word coopetition for a number of years. And coopetition is simply this. It's the merger of competition and cooperation. And you merge those two together and you get coopetition. Well, what's that mean to a small town and merchants in a small town? What it means is that there's room for competition. Competition is good for everybody. But in a small town, vindictive competition is not productive. And what do I mean by vindictive competition? Picking up lines that your colleagues already sell in town and competing with them on the exact same product. That is not coopetition. That is vindictive competition. And small towns need coopetition as opposed to competition. So that's just a meeting of the minds. That's conversations that have to take place amongst the local merchants. And I'm here to tell you, somebody in Texas does this extremely well. And I'm going to use them as an example right now. I guess that most of you have heard of the town of Grapevine. Have you all heard of a Grapevine? Well, I did a visit there a few years back, and here's what happened. They take every independent owner of a store on their main street. They get them all in a school bus, and they produce a manual that they give to every store owner that's on the bus. And the manual is the strengths and weaknesses of every business in town. So it's kind of a summary of their destination statement. And a destination statement you might have heard of from a colleague of mine in Colorado. A destination statement is, what do you do that makes you unique? And what is the definition of unique? Unique is one of a kind. So every small business needs a destination statement, or what some people call an elevator pitch. And that's in 30 seconds or less, because that's the attention span of an adult. It's 30 seconds. In fact, a lot of the experts are telling us now it's down to 12 seconds because of the cell phone. We can't concentrate on anything over 12 seconds because the phone's ringing, or we're looking at email, or we're looking at Facebook, or we're looking at Instagram. We're just spread so thin, it's crazy. But, okay, so Grapevine gets the destination statement from every store in town. They get everybody on a bus, and they drive up and down Main Street, pointing out each store and going over the strengths and weaknesses of every store in town. Well, you know what they're doing? They're making everybody a cooperator. A cooperator is an individual that practices coopetition. So here's the deal. Everybody in town knows what everybody else does the best, and they know that. And they know every menu in town and what everybody's best at making. So they become an ambassador for the town of Grapevine. And I'm suggesting that every town do this. And I don't know if you want to follow the same protocol that Grapevine did, But what I'm suggesting is that every merchant in a small town get together and know the strengths and weaknesses of all their colleagues. Now, that can be accomplished sometimes through merchant, some towns form merchants associations, which are just a group of business owners that meet on a recurring basis to talk about what's going on in town. And that conversation can and usually includes what's the next event that's going to go on in town, because it's a perfect opportunity for coopetition, because you're going to have all the merchants banding together to support and be part of an event that the town has planned. And it takes coopetition to pull off a strong event. And I will tell you this, based on the decade I've done of traveling to small towns in the country, small towns are event driven. You don't get 20,000 people in a town on Saturdays unless something unusual and different is happening in that town as an event. Okay? Let me give you the second half of the definition of coopetition. First and foremost, they have prepared their businesses to be safe and antiseptic for their employees and their customers. They are not afraid to make mistakes while taking risky twists and turns to best serve their evolving customer. Along with this, communities that are committed to helping one another so that the entire town can prosper are outperforming towns that don't. The spirit of coopetition far outweighs a less cooperative approach by individual stores. A rising tide raises all the boats, a famous quote from JFK. And I believe that, and I've seen it in action. The towns that work together and work as colleagues and know each other's strengths and weaknesses and work together to perform, to pull off productive events throughout the year are towns that do better than a bunch of disparate individuals trying to do their own business and not caring about their colleagues and co-tenants in town. It just doesn't work as well. So what we're going to do today is go into a second webinar that I developed called Eventacular. I told you that earlier. And throughout, we will begin to look for and talk about examples of coopetition in action. And I truly encourage you to use the chat box and put your comments and questions in there, but particularly comments. These webinars work better if we get feedback from those that are listening in, because I believe that colleagues can train colleagues and help colleagues better than I can. I'm not in Denton. I'm not in your town every day, but you are, and you know what's going on in town. You know what works and doesn't work. And each individual store owner has their own set of parameters for what works and doesn't work for their store. And they should be sharing that with the rest of the town. And I don't really care how you implement this communication, but I do know that the communication is incredibly important and incredibly productive for producing higher sales throughout the town. And the better the overall town does, and Grapevine will tell you this, the better the town does, the better all the individual merchants do as well. So that's kind of a backdrop for Eventacular. So why do we have local events to begin with? Their exposure is not a nuisance. It's local events are to introduce new and return visitors to town. So there are thousands of people that have discovered your store in your town on the internet from spending the last year shopping online. And guess who liked shopping online as much as anybody did? It's a huge demographic in America, but it's not normally who we're trying to chase down, particularly on the internet. Any guesses? Anybody raising their hand? Anybody want to put anything in the chat room? Paul, are you keeping an eye on the chat room?
I am. I have a question though.
Yeah, shoot.
You may actually address this later on,
Yeah.
but how do we get those reluctant shop owners to actually come around and be participative or cooperative, whatever that
Or
word would be?
you mean cooperators practicing coopetition?
Yeah, okay, we'll go there.
You'll go with that.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
You know what? It's peer pressure. It's gotta be the other stores getting on them about it. You've got to use gentle, you know, persuasion. You know, you've got to, there's strength in numbers. So if most of the town is cooperators and working together, they need to gather as a group and go visit some of these folks that are not part of the program and part of being cooperative with the rest of the town. I mean, we can't, there's nothing in their lease that says they have to cooperate. There's nothing in their lease that says they have to actually participate in an event. But I think if the most of the town finds that events are very productive for them, that a group of them can convince the non cooperators to get involved. That's my advice, and that's what I know from my experience. Do you have any advice? Do you know of any ways that work? Paula, as an advisor?
I come from a chamber background actually
Yeah.
too, and a lot of those that can put the pressure on are actually chamber members or members of those associations where you've got the businesses in the town actually together.
Like merchants
Yeah,
association.
Merchants Association. That's
Yeah.
it. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
It's, will they do it? Will they actually step up and say, you know, this is best for the town and we need you to participate. We're all participating. We need you to do that as well.
I don't know. They may need somebody like me pushing them from behind, or someone like you, or someone like Brett, or anybody that might come in from the outside and say, "Look, this is what I see. What's going on here?" Listen, and just maybe be involved. Maybe be involved. Brett, were you going to say something?
Yeah,
I was
Brett has
asking
a
permission to
suggestion.
say something. Yes, Mark, I was coming from that particular industry myself. One of the things I found very helpful is when you have that group coming in to have a meeting with all of the storefront owners as well as restaurant owners to try to create the atmosphere of this is a winning opportunity for the city and the town that you're going to be in. And we want to hear your suggestions as to what we might do together, collaborating to draw people to your businesses. We'd like to hear from you. And that opened up a whole world of, I want to call it frenzy, if you will, of saying, oh my gosh, that's right. There's a lot of people coming. What can we do? Well, we're going to have specials on this. We're going to make it, for example, in Montreal one time, they actually pulled us out onto the patios and everybody decided to push out onto their patios to create a street atmosphere, even though they normally did not use that. They were all indoor places so that they could walk and see their wares, or they could walk and stop for a beverage along the way. And it worked flawlessly and they all made money. So
that's a great example. Let me give you one that's in that same vein. I live in a little town called Leesburg. It was established in 1752. and the main street is alive and well. And last fall, we tried something. We tried, we do first Saturdays. You guys know what first Saturdays are? The
Yep.
first Saturday of every month, everybody stays open till 9. And it's a party, and all the doors are open. There's live music, there's entertainment, and it rocks. And we've been doing first Saturdays for, I don't know, at least a half a dozen years. Well, what we've done now is last fall, we decided to close Main Street with road barriers at the beginning of Main Street and at the end, and there's a cop car parked sideways at both ends, and it's all pedestrian traffic. And we tried it on Saturday nights last fall. It was so successful that we now do it Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays every weekend, year around. That's how a town gets together and works together and has extraordinary events. And that you have an example right in your neck of the woods. Grapevine is a perfect example of a town that pulls it off flawlessly. So know that and certainly promote that. And is there anyone that's listening that's a store owner that wants to chime in and give us an example of how it works?
If anyone would like to join the discussion, just unmute yourself.
Yeah,
And join in.
I don't make everybody wait till the end with their questions or comments. All you have to do is unmute yourself and say, "Hey, Mark," or "Hey, Paula, this is what I do and it works great." Or I tried this and it didn't work at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know, and I know during COVID, you had to try a lot of things to make business better. And we know some of them work and some of them don't. So I'm the guy that says, if you're not making mistakes, you're not taking enough risks. Listen, Thomas Edison said, I tried 10,000 times to make a light bulb. I found 10,000 ways not to make one.
Mm-hmm.
But what did he get out of it in the end? A light bulb that is the same light bulb we use today. So you got to try things. So anyways, back to local events. It brings out locals. They come, you know what the locals think? And they're right. Every store ought to be doing something. They ought to be promoting something. They ought to have a sale going on. They ought to have a raffle going on. They ought to have a contest going on. Towns, during an event, the stores have to take the event on as if it's their own. And they have to market it as if it's their event in their store. And we'll get to that in a second. But, you know, the event itself is marketed way above and beyond what a merchant could pay for on their own to market their own store. So it's a great opportunity for co-op advertising and running things as a group and paying for them together as a group so that it's not as expensive. And every visitor that comes, whether you think they're your customer or not, should be considered a potential shopper. And shame on you if you don't think that you could sell to anybody that comes through your front door. And if there's a committee that the town's put together to plan this event, get a merchant and a store owner and a restaurant owner on that committee. Because sometimes town councils and town committees are filled with people that have never run their own store in their whole life. So sometimes they need someone to raise their hand and say, hold on, you can't put all the food trucks there. That's where the restaurants are. Put the food trucks at the other end of town. Or don't close that street. That's where the entrance to the parking lot is on that street. Don't close. You know, sometimes someone has to be the voice of wisdom or experience and be able to say, no, come on, guys. And here's what happens. We lose sight of how it affects the local. Look, the events are not for the people that come in with chicken on a stick in their own booth. It's not for the vendors you've hired to come in the day of the event. The event's for your local merchants. And it's exposure. And you know what I tell stores? It's not about the amount of business you do the day of the event. Sure, if you're a good retailer, you'll do a lot of business because you're going to have thousands of people in town. And, you better do more business because that's more walk-in traffic than you normally get. It's about the exposure. It's about the people that see your cool store or your great restaurant for the first time and say, you know what, it's too crowded today. It's too busy today. I'm coming back next weekend with my friends to show them this store or show them this restaurant and eat in it and shop in the store. So it's about exposure as much as it is about the event itself and how much business you do that day of the event. I need to move this little box on the screen. Okay? The other great idea is to have the event, if there's a website for it, it ought to have links to every website for every store in town. And if you create a flyer or a map for the event, which I highly recommend, it needs to have a red star on top of every local merchant and every local restaurant, so that people know where the local businesses are and can find them easily. And make sure that your town has public Wi-Fi. Because how do people find you? How do people find you when they get to town if they're looking for you? Brett, Paula, how do you think they find you?
On their phones.
And what are they doing on their phone?
Well, they're accessing the websites or searching for the websites and
And
the maps and
what search engine do they normally use?
Google.
Of course, it's Google. Everybody Googles everything, and you have got to be the result of a Google search. And by the way, you got to be on the first page of results. Why? Because Americans don't go past the first page.
Yeah.
There's 8 or a dozen companies on the first page. They are on their way there. And only use, by the way, only use the results that aren't shaded in blue. The shaded in blue results, those businesses paid to be there. But the ones that aren't shaded and are on the first page of results earned their way there, and they deserve a visit from you. So you want to be on the first page. You want to hear a real quick trick? It's worth about $1,000, $2,000. Would you like to hear this? Okay, I'm going to tell it to you. I'm going to tell it to you. Who owns YouTube?
Google.
Of course they do. What do you think Google looks for first when they do a search?
Videos.
Of course they do, because they own YouTube. If you put a 30-second video on the homepage of your website, 30 seconds again, because that's the attention span of an adult, of your destination statement or elevator's pitch, and I want it to be you because I want them to recognize you when they come in their store, in your store. Oh my God, there's the owner. I saw them in the video on the homepage. Okay? And guess what? If you do that, you will show up in a search result before any of your competitors do that don't have a video. I just gave you a couple $1,000s worth of search engine optimization for free. And I've checked with the techno guys. It works. Google looks for video first. So how about that? That was a good gift for y'all.
Excellent.
So Team Eventacular, towns and events and merchants partnering for profit. And it's important that we have coopetition and we have people cooperating with each other to pull off an effective and successful event. And what's the benefits to you as a merchant? New customers, a reason to promote or have a sale, a reason to have an event in your store. And by the way, I want you creating a buzz on your own website and your own social platforms for 30 days leading up to the event. This is what we're going to do. We're going to have these vendors in the store. We're going to have this local celebrity in the store. We're going to have refreshments. We're going to have a contest. We're going to have a buy one, get one. We're going to have just make, you got to make yourself stand out and do when you set your window for the month or for the 2 weeks heading into the event, it better have an event theme. So let's say the event's about barbecue. Let's say you have a barbecue cook-off event every year in your town. That's appropriate for Texas, isn't it? Well, well, you want to have your window look like a barbecue. You want to barbecue stuff in the window. You want steaks and ribs hanging from the window, spatulas. I don't know, maybe you put a green egg in your window, put a Weber in your window. I don't care, but make it look like you have been part of the event since it was planned. And you ought to have coupons that you printed. One of the things that events have usually is live music. At one end of town, they set up live music. Live music works for events. Well, some of the business owners would say to me, well, everyone's down at the other end of town listening to the music, and they're not up here shopping with me. I said, don't cry in your spilt milk. Take a part-timer that's not busy right now and take a coupon down to that crowd and pass it out to them while they're listening to that music about the event you're having in your store, and to come up there when the music's finished, because you're staying open late so that they can participate in your promotion, your sale, your contest, and your raffle. Come on, don't be a Debbie Downer. Be excited. Make it happen. Make it happen in your store. Goodness gracious.
Neiman Marcus used to do a really good job on, they had something called Fortnite.
Of course they did.
And every year, 2 weeks prior to the start of that event, their windows were just kind of a teaser. All of the stuff in their windows looked like, or gave an indication of what Fortnite was going to be, and the products and everything available, and it was just wonderful.
Let's ask a question. Halloween is an event. Christmas is an event, right? Don't you think that local merchants build holiday windows and Halloween windows? Of course they do. And most towns that use their brains have contests for the best windows, so that the merchants do put some effort into their windows. Well, I'm saying you have to do the same thing for events outside major holidays. In fact, let me say this now. I'm going to say, I might have said it earlier, I'm going to say it again because I'm inspired. I think that every town in America should grand reopen as a celebration to the end of the virus and shopping local. And I think it should be on July 4th weekend, because President Biden said by July 4th, I want everybody to be with their families again without masks and celebrating, hugging, kissing, shaking hands, and having a good time. In fact, some of the forecasters have said that when this is really put to bed and over, we're going to move into a period of hedonism, and like the roaring 20s, people are going to want to have parties and be outside and visit their stores and hang out on Main Street. We're going to have a great time. And it is a time for positive, thoughts, is there's light at the end of the tunnel. This is a time for optimism. So come on, let's have events and let's cooperate and let's be cooperators and let's make. Do you think there's that many people in this town on a normal day? Of course not. So when I say plan and promote, I need to tell you a couple things about events. There are open events and closed events. Did you know that? Open events means you can come and go any way you want. You come in, you can leave, you can come in from any direction. There's no, the town's not closed off. It's an open event. Now, some towns run what they call closed events. And closed events is when the downtown Main Street is actually closed off. And there's an entrance and an exit to get in and out of the event. Now, I'll give you an example one. We have a home and garden event in our little town of Leesburg. So we close off the 4 downtown blocks of town. And you have to go in through one entrance. And it costs to get in. It's $7. Kids are free, but adults pay $7. And 30,000 people come in 2 days. You don't think that's a moneymaker for town? Okay. So, and the other thing about a closed event is you know exactly how many people have come because they had to come through the entrance. So it's a great way of judging success. If you have an open event, the only way to figure out how many people are there is to take a picture from a drone of a certain square feet, count the number of people in that feet, and multiply it by the number of square feet in town. And that's how you extrapolate how many people you think came to it. So open and closed events. On an open event, there's another town I go to that parks everybody at the nearby high school and buses them into town via school buses because there's not enough room for everybody to park in town. And they charge to ride the bus. That's how they make money. So you can make money with your event in an open event or a closed event. But an information booth is very helpful at an event so that you can pass out the maps you made of town that point out the local merchants and point out any other things. Sometimes there's a town-wide contest or raffle where someone wins 500 town bucks by visiting every store in town. They fill out a passport, and the only way you can be entered into the contest is to visit every store and get your passport stamped. And some towns will say, well, okay, they'll just come in to get their passport stamped. And Paula, what do I say to them? Shame on you. They came in your store, you sell to them. What are you, nuts? Come on. The customer in hand is like a bush in it, a bird in a bush. Come on, they're in your store. You better sell to them. So information booths are good. Open or closed, it doesn't matter to me. Any comments, any suggestions? I hear someone speaking in the background. Anybody?
Let's see, Nosa had a question. She asked, what co-opetition advice would you give a new business owner who's the first merchant to own a storefront in a new developing neighborhood?
So there's only one store in the whole town in a new neighborhood? Is that what?
We have a lot of growth in this area. And
Of
so there's
course you
some
do.
strip malls coming up. They're just popping up. And if you've got one, I've actually seen them in the middle of a neighborhood for some reason. So if they're the first storefront in that area, what advice could you share with them to actually get something, an event like this started?
Well, they'd obviously have to run the event out of their own store if they're the only store so far.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to run it as if it was a store-wide or a town-wide event. So they go full steam ahead with the event they have in their store. But let me say this, because this question reminds me of it. Listen, in order for you to be a cooperator, or part of the town, you need to visit every store in town, introduce yourself, get to know the owner of the store that you visit, get their menu, get their strengths, and talk to them, see if they have a rack card maybe that they've developed for hotels, nearby hotels and motels. Just get their rack card, get any information they have, get the URL to the best way to learn about your colleagues is to visit every one of their websites. You could visit every store in your town from your store by simply going to their websites.
Yeah, I
You
can, I
know, and
can
I
see
have
that.
people
Yeah.
say to me all the time, do you know that that owner down the street has never once stepped foot in my store? You can't be a cooperator and expect people to cooperate with you if you don't at least visit them, and better yet, shop with them, for God's sake,
Hmm.
right? Buy something from a local store. Come on, use your head. Okay, I've already said this. Window displays. They must have a focal point, unity. Sketch it out beforehand. If you don't have a good window, you could paint your window with a graphic. So windows are important, and that they're the first sign that you're a participating member of this event. You're part of it. Here's music at the end of town, but I know live music works for events.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now booth setup. When when a town has an event, a lot of times they have booths set up on Main Street of the local merchants as well as people they've invited from out of town. Some vendors that have things that the town doesn't sell. So I would never invite in a vendor that's selling something that competes with one of your local merchants. Same thing with a food vendor. Don't bring in, someone that's going to compete directly with one of the local restaurants. It doesn't make any sense. But here's the deal with booths. Enlightened towns offer the space in front of a local merchant, that space to the local merchant.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
You with me? I want the
Yeah.
booth in front of a store to be part of the store, not someone else. And I don't want to back on that booth. I want it open. And you know what I want it to be? A tunnel or an awning to your front door. You're not really wanting to sell them outside. Don't dare bring your cash register outside. You want people to go into your store to pay because you want them in your store. You can't show your whole merchandise assortment in your booth. The booth is to whet their appetite. The booth is a lure. It's a bright, shiny object. It's to get their attention. But the goal is to get them through your front door. You with me?
Gotcha.
Come on now. And who comes to events anyway? Oh no, not all those women with strollers. They're not coming in their store. They're gonna mess my store up. You can come in, but leave the stroller outside. Right. You're gonna leave the kid outside when you're shopping inside. Okay, so there are lots of types of visitors that come to an event. Some are coming because they know the event's for free and they want to entertain their family. So they're bringing the whole family. They're out. They don't plan to spend any money. They plan to eat the carnival food and wander town. But remember, it's exposure. They may find you. They may not know. And here's the new customer. There are thousands of people that found you on the internet that had never come out to your town or your store, and they're coming out for the first time because Texas has ended the mandate for the mask and all stores are open 100%. So people are out and about again. There are visitors that have come because of the event's promotions, and they most likely will spend money. And then there's locals out checking out the madness, and locals looking for the deals due to the event,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
So the strategy in an event is you want to slow them down. So you got to keep COVID in mind. You still want to look at some distancing, but I call it pinballing. You don't want to lap in your store where they can get down one side and back up the other, in 15 minutes and leave. You want them bouncing and going from booth to store, in stores, out of stores. Um, Keep the cash wrap in store. It's a great day to have your sandwich board outside that says much more inside, air conditioned inside, cold water inside, because you want to get them inside your store. Demonstrate something. People love demonstrations. Demonstrate something, cook something. You might, I don't know, you might be an art gallery and you might have weavers or potters or painters. Have them doing their thing. People love to watch people do their skill. Stay focused on the guests, stay off your cell phones, don't overly interact with your booth mates. The day of an event is arduous work because you got to talk to so many people and you got to pay attention to them. And now with COVID, I'm telling you, you have to be kind and practice empathy because people have been weirded out by this thing. People are grieving. People are sad. People are alone. People are lonely. They want to hug, kiss, shake hands. They want to be around other people. It's in our DNA, for goodness sake. So, what ideas do people have about getting people into their stores and promoting local events? Anybody want to share?
If anyone wants to share, just unmute yourself and join the conversation.
And don't be scared of me. I'm not Gordon Ramsay. I'm not going to cuss at you or make you cry. It's okay. We've covered a lot of ground, but I wish someone would speak up. Anyways, don't forget to plan for next year right after the event's over. Post-mortem. Well, we should have parked everybody over there, not over there. We should have had it as a closed event. No, we should have had it as an open event. I mean, take the temperature, get the reading from the event itself. Was it a success? What needs to be done differently? Who did very, very well? There are stores that have their best day of the year, the day of a good event.
Mm-hmm.
There are stores that don't. There are stores that don't know how to work an event or promote an event within their own store. So we're kind of past the 4 o'clock or the 3 o'clock hour. I was going to finish with this short story because I think it's compelling. You want me to do that, Paula?
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, see this next slide? Okay, so I'm Mark Wilson. I'm a botanist by education. I'm a scientist. I was a plant scientist and I was a biology major. How the heck did I end up in retail and restaurants for 4 decades? So I decided to look at what my ancestors did to see if there was some reason for it. Well, guess what? My great-grandfather was a general in the Civil War. He was a Yankee. He lived up north in Pennsylvania. When the war ended in 1865, He took 300 people in a wagon train to Bozeman, Montana, and opened the Wilson Mercantile in 1866. It was the store of the entire town. So there's a picture of it there. It was the hardware store. It was the clothing store. It was the shoe store. It was the post office. It was everything to that town. And my great grandfather opened it because he wanted a place to sell the stuff that he brought out between the wagon trains. So here he is. He's sitting on the back porch. He's the second one from the left with the bowler on, sitting down with his legs crossed. That's General Lester S. Wilson. And he was the proprietor of the Wilson Mercantile. And while I did the research, I found a quote from him in the newspaper. And I want to share it with you because it's why I do what I do today. Listen to this. My business standards shall have in them a note of sympathy for our common humanity. My business dealings, ambitions, and relations shall always cause me to take into consideration my highest duties as a member of society. In every position in business life, in every responsibility that comes before me, my chief thought shall be to fill that responsibility and discharge that duty so that when I have ended with each of them, I shall have lifted the level of human ideals and achievements a little higher than I found it. That's what I attempted to do today. I attempted to leave you higher than I found you, with knowledge and tips and ideas to be more successful as an independently owned business in your town.
Mark, I have thoroughly enjoyed this because it is so timely because we are getting to the time where, fall is festival time.
Let's get them going. Let's have one this
Yeah.
summer. Let's have a
It's time to
huge
get
one
'em-
on July 4th.
Yeah, it's time to start planning. It's time to get everyone out and enjoying life again.
Well,
So,
Paul, I thought it was very appropriate for now because it's time to start events.
yeah, it is. It
And I couldn't
definitely is
talk
that.
about Coopetition for an hour.
Well, I'm glad
So
you
anyways,
shared this information.
I hope everyone enjoyed it and learned plenty and we'll come back to hear me again.
That. Thank you, Mark. We
You're
appreciate
welcome.
we appreciate your talent.
Oh, well, thank you. It's my purpose in life, so I got to do it well because I love doing it.
Well, and your ancestors said that's what you're supposed to do as well.
And he's
So,
resting in peace, so I'm doing a good job. All right, thank you all.
thank you, Mark. Just want to share my screen with everyone real quick.
Yeah.
We are these are some of our upcoming webinars, and this is just within the next couple of weeks. We've got a whole summer's worth of them. Tomorrow we have a doubleheader, naming, niching, and branding with Jamie Ellithorpe, and then Lorna Kibbe comes back with meetings, how to make them short, sweet, and effective. Who does not want to know that? And later on June 9th, we have Tisha Dodge back talking about employee handbooks. I mean, those are excellent questions that every business owner with a staff may have. So be sure and join that. I want to make sure everyone understands you'll be receiving a survey in your email, and we would appreciate it so much if you would please fill out that survey, give us your feedback, and we use this information to figure out what topics our clients, our audiences would like to hear about. So please give us your feedback. And I would like to thank our benefactors. We receive funding from the Small Business Administration, the state of Texas, North Texas SBDC Regional Office, and North Central Texas College. And it's because of them we are able to provide the webinars and our resources to you at no cost. You can access the webinars and our website with all of the information, all of the resources. You can schedule an appointment or whatever you need and talk to an advisor. The website is there on the slide, www.sbdc.nctc.edu. Thank you all for coming this afternoon. It was a great topic. Thank you, Mark, for your presentation. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow for our double header. Thanks so much.